Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Necro Thursday. This week, it's me and Jeff, and I hope everyone's doing well. How's it going, Jeff?
Not bad, man. How are you doing?
Life is good, I have to say. One thing I want to add is we got to hurry up and do this, man, because I got to go to see the Misfits tonight. I just want to let you know that.
You're going to see the Misfits?
Yeah, man. They're playing at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. And
Okay.
I will be in attendance along with my lady Tina, and we're going to have a great time tonight.
Have you seen the reunited Misfits yet?
Negative on that. I have never seen the Misfits perform. I realize that Dave Lombardo is playing drums for them, but this will be my first time experiencing these songs performed by 75% of the original band.
Who are all 75 now?
I'm close, I guess, you know.
Yeah, I saw the Michael Graves led Misfits. I'm ashamed to say it. This was, this was right before I moved to Boston, so 95, 96.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 18, 19. And it was the first time the Misfits were back ever. Like, they were gone for a long time. They were back, and they obviously didn't have Glenn Danzig singing for them. So they were playing a small place in Providence, Rhode Island. I can't quite. Babyhead, Club Babyhead.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember that place?
That place is tiny for a band like that. Yeah, I played, I'm sure you have too, played many, many shows there.
Yeah, I went to a ton of shows there too. Yeah, I would say maybe like a 400 capacity room at the very most.
I would say if that, honestly.
Yeah, it was the most insanely packed I've ever seen that place. And, you know, it was kind of cool. It was like seeing a really good cover band, you know, like no Danzig. Without Danzig, it's not the Misfits.
I mean, 100%. I mean, the whole concept and the aesthetic and just the skull, and, you know, even though Danzig, you know, co-opted that skull from a Marvel comic book, the whole vibe of the band is 100% Glenn Danzig, man. So it's just like, yeah, it's like watching a cover band, in my opinion, too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And one of my friends got into a fight about the 2 songs into the set and got thrown out. I remember that.
I've seen
Yeah,
Danzig. I've seen Danzig perform countless times, but never the Misfits. So this is a pretty cool night for me coming up.
that's amazing. I've never seen Glenn Danzig live. Period. Heard a lot of great stories from Justin. You know, Godflesh toured with Danzig back in the 90s. He had some very amusing stories about hanging out with Glenn.
Huge fan. Though I do love the Misfits, my favorite Danzig stuff is the Sam Hain stuff for sure.
Interesting. Misfits would be my favorite. First 2 Danzig records are up there too. Great stuff, classics.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first 2 Danzig records are almost like an extension of Sam Hain in some ways, you know, because it's some of the Danzig, the band Danzig, like Glenn.
Yeah.
From my understanding, is that it was Sam Hain was going to get signed, and then it became Danzig. That's in a nutshell. That's my understanding of the whole thing.
The Sam Hain stuff seems a little looked over. I don't know. I know hardcore fans worship those records, but I mean, I don't think, is that stuff even streaming
No.
at this point?
Nope. You have to have the physical copies of those songs.
Yeah, it's like the forgotten era of his music. It's a shame. I'm sure they'll pop up someday.
Oh,
You know, it's the same thing with Rollins Band. Like, a lot of their best records you can't stream anywhere.
Well, I discovered over the last few months that Hard Volume is not streaming. However, Turned On, which has some of those tracks. Some of the earlier stuff is starting to show up. Like those are the best records, man. Like the, you know, Lifetime,
Oh, yeah.
Hard Volume, Turned On. Like those, you know, those early Rollins band. That's the band at its crucial phase, you know, and that's starting to pop up now online. But yeah, the Sam Hain stuff is it seems to be conspicuously absent from streaming services.
I wonder why. I never understand how that stuff works. Like, you know, it's a rights issue, I would imagine.
I mean, isn't that all Plan 9 stuff? Like, I imagine Glenn owns all the rights to those songs.
Yeah, he probably does. Maybe he just doesn't like it. I don't want anybody to hear this.
Dude, I mean, or he might be, I'm sure there's some master plan going on with releasing it, I imagine. Maybe after this Misfit stuff is done, Because he's done tours as like Sam Hain. There was like a few years ago, Goatwhore went on a Sam Hain tour.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And like, with London May, I think, was playing in the band, and they had like Damien or whatever showed up, I guess, and Steve Zing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. This Misfits tour reunion thing has been going on way longer than I thought it would. I mean, we're coming up on like I don't know, 5 or 6.
Yeah. I'm not going to think too much about it. I'm just going to fucking have fun. You know what I mean? Like I'm one of those guys who wants to dislike shit, and like talk shit about stuff. And, it's not the real Misfits. I mean, all right, cool. Robo's not playing drums, but you got Dave Lombardo, which is an awesome replacement.
Yeah.
And
if it's Danzig, it's the Misfits. Yeah. That's what I think.
And then this fall, there's as part of Tina's birthday present, we're going to see Danzig down in Atlantic City with as like it's the anniversary for the first Danzig record.
Oh God! What anniversary is it?
I don't know, like 30 or something like that.
30, yeah, it has to be at least 30, yeah.
And it's like a whole big weekend we got planned. We're gonna, we're staying at the casino. It's at the Hard Rock. The guys in Tombs are going. Everyone's going. Everyone's like, all my friends out here are heading down for that show. It's gonna be cool.
Awesome, man. We usually start the podcast talking. We'll check what we've been checking out, and it's funny we start talking about music because there's one thing I wanted to bring up. I can't believe we didn't bring it up last time we spoke. Swans put out a new album.
Yes, I haven't listened to it yet. However, I'm aware that the record came out.
Yes, I've been listening to it a lot. Very, very, very pleased to say that I like it a lot. I wasn't crazy about the last one, Leaving Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
This seems like, the last one felt directionless to me. I don't know. I know you liked it more than I did.
Yeah. This
one feels more like a band, with more focus, more intent behind what they're doing. It's the better version of their last record, Leaving Meaning. That's what I think.
Yeah, I need to. I think I'm gonna put that on right after we're done here. While I'm getting
I think
ready.
You're gonna like it.
Yeah,
it's very mid-era Swans. Like,
see, that's my favorite era, actually. Like Children of God and like Soundtracks for the Blind and like that kind of stuff. I think is like probably my favorite era of the band.
Yeah, it's it kind of sounds like the stuff that was compiled for Various Failures. It's sort of in that vein.
I know Children of God. I know that came out in the 80s, but stylistically, I always lump it in with the more mid-period stuff because it sounds like the beginning of that era. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, but it's a really good record, really heavy listen. The guy's 69, 7 years old at this point. He's got a few things on his mind.
Sure, probably death. I imagine is weighing heavy on him.
Yes, yeah. That's what I gathered listening to it for sure. And other things, I don't know if you were talking to me about this, but I started Black Mirror season 6.
Yeah, we spoke about it.
Yeah, I only watched the first 2 episodes, but what do you think of season 6? I think by the next time we talk, I'll be finished with it. But
in general, I think it's a hit. There are things I find not that great about it, but the first 2, the second one I really liked.
The one about the they're making a documentary.
Yeah, I thought that one was really cool.
I like that one too.
The first one I thought started off strong, and then kind of like the very, very ending was cool, but there was like I would say the beginning before you hit the conclusion. I feel like some of that stuff was a little long-winded. You know what I mean? With the okay, cool. You're doing all this crazy shit. The thing I still go back to how the wild man, the guy with the crazy sex looks like a guy who would get cheated on by his girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like that dude does not look like the kind of guy who delivers, if you follow me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought that was strange. I thought that was strange asking myself.
It's like, she's like talking about how crazy, oh man, we had the best sex. He was like this wild man. And I'm like, okay, cool. It's like some dark like guy, like a leather jacket or whatever. And then this dude shows up and I'm like, no, that's the guy whose girlfriend cheats on him, not the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like he works for FedEx or something like that. He's kind of got that look for it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that I'm
I
using broad generalizations here, but whatever.
it's that kind of morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was struck while watching the first episode. I was struck by how different tonally it was from when I first started watching Black Mirror, or probably whenever it came out 10 years ago. At this point, like the show was deadly serious, and dark, and dreary, and there's a lot more humor to it now in the newer seasons.
I'm responding to that as a little unfavorably. You know what I mean? Like like I said, in general, I think it's a hit as a show. Okay, but when I compare it to the other episodes in the earlier seasons, it's not as good. There are certain things I liked about it, like the second one about the more like folky horror one, the British one, and
Yeah,
the one with Aaron Paul where they're in outer space. I thought that was pretty cool.
I haven't gotten there yet.
All right, yeah, but yeah, there's a little too much. There's like a softer edge to it, which I don't appreciate really.
Yeah, which is interesting because I started watching that because this was 4th of July, kind of hanging out, looking for something to watch, and we were watching Jordan Peele's newer Twilight Zone.
Garbage.
They were having a marathon.
Horrible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess there's a way you can watch them all in black and white. I think if you buy the Blu-ray, and I think that would certainly help. But I mean, it was just so heavy-handed and so obvious, and I can't imagine. I don't know. I wasn't around when the original Twilight Zone aired.
Yeah.
And I saw it much later. I mean, I wonder if it was the same thing for the original Twilight Zone, where people just kind of rolled their eyes, like, "Oh, yeah, I get what you're trying to say."
I don't know, man. I've always thought very highly of the original Twilight Zone. I've always been a
show.
Gigantic fan of that whole thing, and even Outer Limits I really enjoyed too.
Yeah.
And the disclaimer before I say this, I'm going to say that I am a registered Democrat. I did not vote for Donald Trump, and I believe in racial equality. I think that Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone sucks, and it has nothing to do with any of those other things. So I just wanted, before anyone wants to crucify me for being some sort of right wing, extremist or something, or some weirdo.
No, I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah.
Like it's not good. I'm not that impressed with Jordan Peele's output as a filmmaker. I think he's made one good movie, one okay movie, and Us, which I thought was just flat out bad.
Yeah.
And the Twilight Zone, his Twilight Zone. I was excited that I was like, okay, this should be interesting. And when I saw it, it was just kind of, I don't know, man. Like it's hard to recreate that magic of the original, because they were like 30-minute plays. They felt like,
yeah.
And this just didn't have that I don't know, and it was just so hammer onto your head, obvious there with their political messaging. Which again, I registered Democrat just like you. I agree with it, but be a little bit more creative about it.
I guess that's my beef as well. I mean, like, I think, Rod Serling was primarily that era of Twilight Zone was really preoccupied with telling a good story that was like, horror story, but still a smart story, and talking about the human condition and things like that. And yeah. I feel like, but the first and foremost was telling the story. I feel like Peele, his thing is like his politics first and then the story second. And like, that's just not for me. I mean, if it's for you, great. But for me, though I do enjoy when people put their viewpoints in there, their points of view, and their, whatever political leanings they have is interesting to me. But like, you got to tell a story and make it compelling first. And then that other stuff should be a layer that's incorporated into the storytelling,
Absolutely. Like the original Candyman versus his production of the Candyman. I thought that remake was eye-rollingly bad. One of the worst horror movies I've seen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In the last few years.
Yeah. I thought
people really liked it.
I thought Nope was good. I in general I thought Nope was good. There were things, I had issues with some of it. Just I thought it was too long, and you could listen to the episode we did on it, and then I thought his first one was awesome. I thought that was great. Yeah,
it was good. Yeah, Nope has over time become my favorite of his.
Yeah. And I'm going to revisit that actually, because I've been thinking about that movie again, and I'm like, I should watch that again and just check it out again. Definitely.
Yeah, it's got some problems, but yeah, okay, yeah. Listen to our episode.
Yeah.
Scroll back. What about you, man? What have you been checking out other than the reunited Misfits?
I've been checking out. I just recently watched Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer again.
Oh, jeez, yeah,
Dude, you know, I'm kind of fascinated. For my entire life I've been fascinated with that movie.
sure.
You know, it's in a lot of ways it's not it's extreme in subject matter, but it's not like
Hmm.
an extreme horror film. Do you know what I mean?
Oh no, definitely, and it has the. I remember I was, I think, in junior high school when I saw that, and it bothered me back then to the point where I just never wanted to watch it again.
Yeah, yeah. It's a movie that I keep going back to just because the vibe and just the atmosphere of it, and Michael Rooker's performance and Tom Towell's
Mhm.
performance in it, I think are great. And it has this quality. It's almost like an art film in some ways. You know what I mean? It reminds me. It has almost like this European vibe to the way the film was made. You know?
Oh, absolutely. It almost feels almost in scenes like a documentary almost. It's got that low budget, sleazy kind of quality to it.
Yeah, and and I think it was very effective. You know, I was very young when I saw it, and then
Mm.
I started traveling around the country in bands, and I was like, oh, man, if we go to the Midwest, someone's going to kill me. You know what I mean? I was afraid of getting serial killed in the
Yeah.
'90s. Whenever we went to like Illinois or Ohio or these places, you associate with guys like Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole, and various
Yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer and all these guys. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And who made that movie? Because I remember that it was kind of not like his other stuff. I can't remember who made it.
McNaughton. The fuck's his name?
John?
John McNaughton.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we Mike and I covered this a while back.
Oh, I should go back and listen
Yeah.
to that.
You know what's interesting too is that John McNaughton. What's interesting about it is that he also had something to do with the score of the film too.
Really?
Yeah, and you don't remember the score because if you think back to that movie, right? You
Hmm.
remember it as not having any score, but there actually is a score.
I was gonna say I don't remember there being a score at all.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually, Death Waltz put it out, and I have a copy of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to listen to it without the movie playing. You know.
I bet.
Related to that, I also watched the Austrian film Angst. Have you seen that?
Oh, that's from late 80s, early 90s, right?
I don't know what era it came out. I should have looked this up beforehand. Yeah, we love doing this, man. 80,
Throwing you some hardball
yeah,
questions here.
83. Yeah.
Okay. I was kind of close. Yeah, I remember reading about that movie in like Rue Morgan back, 15 years ago or whatever. That movie wasn't available anywhere. It was very hard to find. I remember trying to track a copy down and couldn't get one.
Well, it's out. You can pick up a nice Blu-ray of it. I think Arrow put it out. It's got the one I have is it has a introduction by Gaspar Noé, and there's a
Hmm.
interview that Jörg Buttgereit did with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, another controversial guy with all of his Necromaniac and Shram and all that sort of stuff. Or I'm
Right,
sorry,
yeah.
Necromantic 1 and
Yeah,
2.
yeah.
Yeah, and Shram. Very, very interesting movie. In some ways, connected spiritually to Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer because they're both films are loosely based on actual happenings. You know.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Eggs had a very notorious reputation.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely both films. Both films were been chopped up, banned in England. As nasties, and
Yes.
very hard to find uncut versions of those films.
Mm. I gotta check it out. I kind of forgot about it, and like I said, I never found a copy, and I just sort of forgot about it. Like you bringing it up reminds me that I need to watch it.
Apparently, the scene that the Brits had problems with in Henry was where they rewound the murder scene.
Oh, really?
They were Otis Toole, Tom Towles' character, was like wanted to rewind the tape so he can watch the murder scene again. The Brits had a problem with that one.
Really? That's the part they had a problem with?
Yeah.
Oh, is it that's so interesting to me.
I found that to be very, very disturbing as well, to be honest.
Sure, but I mean, there's a lot more like violent stuff in there. I thought they would have a problem with before that.
Surprisingly, most of the violence takes place off scene, off camera rather.
Yeah, that's true. It's true in a lot of horror movies. When you you think about them in your head, you think of them as more violent, and then when you rewatch them, you're like, oh, there's hardly a drop of blood in this.
Yeah. There's like a beheading scene in Henry that's like, practical effects type of thing. It's very effective. There's like a lot of all the murders take place. Like you see the aftermath of the murders, and then you just see these guys, these very unpleasant guys, like discussing it and figuring out like what to do. And, I don't know. It's just an interesting movie, man. Anyone out there who hasn't seen it, listen to our episode and then go out and check it out.
Sure.
So let's give our rundown of the Horseman Brethren. We're part of this Illuminati of podcasting. That's what I like to refer to it as, the podcast Illuminati. That's us. The Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse. And starting the week off on Mondays, we have Brandon Legion with Horror Wolf 666. On Tuesday, we have the only metal podcast I actually listen to. Occasionally I hit up the Heavy Hole podcast, local tri-state area representation in the world of podcasting. But Into the Necrosphere is the number one metal podcast for me, and that's brought to you weekly on Tuesdays by Jackie Smith. On Wednesdays, you get me with Everything Went Black, and who knows what'll come your way on that show. Thursday, of course, is Necro Thursday, which you're listening to right now. Friday, we have Break the Apocalypse with Mike Scindato's very own brother, John Draper. And it's a very, sort of commentary on society. And it's funny, and I highly recommend it. Also support their Patreon, too. Sunday, after taking Saturday off, we come to Sunday, which is a blasphemy against God. We have Soul Knocks, brought to you by Carl Hikara. And Carl and I are going to be recording another episode of Darkness Weaves, our podcast dedicated to the work of Carl Edward Wagner. And that's going to be released on a forthcoming episode of Soul Knocks. And that's it, man. That's all the content you need on a weekly basis, and we're happy.
Pretty much.
We're happy to be doing it.
Quite a crew we have.
Yeah. And this week we don't have any calls, but if you want to leave us a message on the Necro phone, you can hit us up at 908-913-0782. That's 908-913-0782. And we're compiling a list of all the recommendations, and we've started covering some of these, such as Burnt Offerings and Death Dream. These are all ones that have come from what you guys have suggested to us. And I'm putting a list together, and probably we're going to try to maybe do one a month. There's a lot, but we're going to try to maybe do one a month from the Necrophone. So if you guys want us to check something out, I can't guarantee we're going to do it for sure if it's something that we unanimously do not want to cover. But if it's a good recommendation or something interesting, even if the movie's not good, we'll consider it and we'll do an episode on it. So there you go.
Yeah, some good stuff. I've been really enjoying the messages.
It's fun, right? I enjoy it too, man, and it's part of the whole thing now. I enjoy hearing from people,
Yeah, we have our regulars that call in. It's just been fun. I love getting feedback. I love discussing movies with pretty much anyone.
Yeah. So for this week's episode, we're covering Sinister, which a movie that Jeff and I, you and I have been talking about doing this for a while, actually.
I think since I started doing this podcast with you, this has been on the list of films to cover, and we were gonna do another movie, but it was maybe too daunting of a task, so we're like, let's why don't you do Sinister?
Yeah. It's also kind of timely because recently the guy who directed and co-wrote this, Scott Derrickson, he had some recurring success with The Black Phone, which also
Mm,
stars Ethan Hawke. So it's kind of timely that we go back and hit one of his earlier works.
yes, yeah. That would make an interesting double feature, I guess.
Yeah, in a way, I was thinking the same thing. So yeah, this is directed by Scott Derrickson, who directed Black Phone, Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I haven't seen, and Doctor
Oh, you never
Strange.
saw that?
No, I haven't actually.
It's actually not bad.
Yeah, written by co-written by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargil, and Cargill wrote Sinister 1 and 2. I did not realize there was a sequel, Jeff.
There is, and I've seen it.
We'll talk about that for sure. And
Okay.
Cargill also co-wrote Doctor Strange. And
Yeah, and the Black Phone. Yeah.
Black Phone, yeah. And this was an early Jason Blum production.
Yeah, it was. I saw that in the credits and was surprised, actually.
Blumhouse has been kind of hit or miss. They're like this machine. It seems like that keeps churning out, material, with like a relatively lower. It seems like they don't have like such a high bar for, for quality maybe.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this was 2012, so I think they were still new to the game back then, or
Yeah.
newer at least.
Well, that's
And we always, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
they're like the Metal Blade of horror movies. Started off strong and they just started putting out whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've talked about it on this podcast, the Bloomhouse sheen that some movies have. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And this doesn't happen.
definitely not. So released on March 11th, 2012 at South by Southwest, and then in the U.S. October 12th, 2012. So it did its little festival run. It's 109 minutes long, and I did not find this to be a long movie. Actually, I didn't feel like it dragged in any points.
Not at all. No.
Apparently, this was inspired by a nightmare that Cargill had after watching The Ring, the 2002 Japanese horror film.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I can kind of see that.
Yeah. I'm going to run down the cast. We've got Ethan Hawke as Ellison Oswalt, a true crime writer. Juliet Rylance as Tracy Oswalt, his wife. Fred Thompson as the sheriff, who doesn't like the fact that this dude moved into his town.
Yeah.
James Ransone as the deputy, and you might remember him from shows like Oz and not Oz, the Wire. He's in the second season of the Wire. Ziggy, yeah. Michael Hall Daddario as Trevor Oswalt, and Claire Foley as Ashley Oswalt. Those are their two children in this in the movie here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Also have Vincent D'Onofrio in there in a small role.
yeah, there's a couple of small roles in here. There's this guy Nick King who portrays the demon in it. D'Onofrio has a small role in there, and yeah.
Speaking of Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, they've obviously collaborated a bunch, and I gotta say, I'm not really a super big fan of any of their stuff.
I agree, except for this movie.
Yeah.
that might be spoiling my opinion about this film, but this movie I think stands out as probably one of their best things that they've done.
Oh yeah, by far too. What's interesting also too is we mentioned this is a Blumhouse production, everything. I read somewhere that they were going for a PG-13 movie with this.
Really?
Yeah. And with that in mind, I thought, well, watching it interesting. There's no swearing in the movie. I don't think hardly a drop of blood in the movie at all. But still, just subject matter alone, and there's no way this was ever going to be PG-13.
Yeah.
But it did seem like they were trying to make like a big horror hit and ended up making something so much more substantial, maybe accidentally.
Well, the fact that there was a sequel, it feels like the this entity was supposed to be like almost like a Freddy Krueger-esque sort of. That was their intention, at least. You know?
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, the sequel sort of. I mean, like you said, you didn't even know there was one.
Yeah.
Didn't have much of an impact.
No.
With like yeah, I think they were trying to go for like something like Saw. They're trying to create like a new horror icon, and sometimes one and done is the way to go with that.
I think so, especially this type of film, and we can talk about this later after we run down some of the plot points. But this really, the narrative subject of this movie is something I find actually very, very interesting and connects with a lot of different things that I like. So yeah, maybe let's just run down some of the key elements of the plot here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But before that, I have to say the title. The title is like it has nothing to do with the movie other than like sort of describing it. Like it's like kind of calling a movie scary.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good point, actually.
I don't know. I just find that amusing. Although perfect title, it is quite a sinister little film.
Yeah, no, definitely. So as I mentioned in the cast rundown, Ethan Hawke plays Ellison, who's a true crime writer, and so that it seems like he's pretty famous, kind of notorious in a lot of ways. Is at odds with the police, law enforcement, because I guess he has, portrayed law enforcement in an unfavorable light, and
as most true crime does.
yeah, exactly, and also. Probably rightly so, because if you think about it, and I'm not. Look, I know we need the cops and everything. I've never been a huge fan of cops my whole life, honestly. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And also, most of the dudes I know that became police officers, that's literally the only thing they could have successfully done in their lives.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dudes who are getting degrees in engineering and stuff are not becoming cops.
Right.
As a matter of fact, when I lived in Boston, you and I both lived in Boston for a while. I remember that there was a sandwich shop I used to go to by where I worked downtown for lunch, and there was this guy that was just kind of couldn't quite figure out like what his job was there. He didn't work the register. He didn't make any sandwiches. He just kind of like was around, like he'd sweep up and like clean the toilets and things like that. And then I discovered that he just passed the exam to become a cop.
Wow.
So there you go. That's my impression of police officers. Hey, sorry if I offended anyone out there, but that's how I feel. You know what I mean? I'm not into like that authoritarian type of guy, honestly.
Yeah.
So anyway, he doesn't like cops.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he just gets into town. They're still moving this stuff into the house, and the sheriff and the deputy show up. So it's like they were ready for him, and they let it be known that he's not welcome here. And this is a really small role for Fred Thompson. I think one of his last roles too. But he was in politics for a while.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a senator or some shit. Congress, I can't remember, but I know he was in like some films, and then he just wasn't for a while because he was in politics. He's a Republican.
Oh, okay.
Or was. He's since passed away.
Yeah, that's
interesting. It's kind of cool to see him pop up again. Again, he's in 2 scenes, but he's the kind of guy that when you see him on screen, he's going to be good.
Yeah, no, definitely. Actually, the opening shot of this film kind of sets the tone for the whole movie, man, and it's very effective. So
very.
Yeah. The opening shot of the movie is this like grainy Super 8 photograph of a family with bags over their heads being hung from a tree. And with this like very, very disturbing, unsettling music playing. And I have to say, the score for this film was actually awesome.
Yes. He has done a ton of horror movies, this guy, Christopher Young. He did Hellraiser 1 and 2.
Really? I didn't know he did that.
There's also music from Sun in this movie.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, the ending scene, that's Sun playing.
Huh. Wow. I wonder if this score is
So yeah,
available anywhere. I want to see if I wouldn't mind owning this. Oh, anyway, so yeah, this scene really sets the tone for the movie. Like, you know, you're in for this like dark ride through some kind of nightmare world after seeing that.
yeah. The movie is not even 2 minutes in, and you like, there's no way that's going to get a PG-13. I mean, it's so unsettling.
So this movie was rated R, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
very are.
Yeah. All right. I didn't know. Like, I didn't really,
Yeah,
Yeah. But so anyway, we're setting the tone for the Oswald family moving into this new house, and it seems like that they move quite a bit because there's always this discussion of them settling in and the kids not being able to make friends, and the son has these kind of emotional problems, and then the daughter is like, an artist. They've made this agreement where she can, paint and draw on the walls of her room as long as it's not throughout the house.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the family in this movie, they don't have a lot of screen time, but the stuff you do get with them is very good, and I thought authentic. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of times in these kind of movies, like the scene with the family talking to kids, I always like is a little cringy, doesn't ring true. But in this, it does. The way he talks to his kids, everything about it, the arguments he has with his wife, it all feels real. Feels like real conversations that people have.
Exactly. And the vibe of the family, you wouldn't necessarily say that there's a negative family vibe, but you can tell that they are traumatizing the kids slightly. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm accurately describing that situation, but you can see that it's maybe not the healthiest environment for the kids.
Right. And I think that's all due to Ellison, or Elson, however the fuck you say his name, Ethan Hawke's character.
Yeah.
He is like another horror movie bad dad. We talked about this a lot when we covered The Lodge, about how every decision the dad made was just absolutely stupid. And in this, I would say the same thing about Ethan Hawke's character. He is very motivated. Like, he thinks he's doing the right thing by his family, but he's really only interested in himself.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not necessarily evil, it's just that he's self-serving, and there's even like a moment in where they were talking about his legacy, right? Concerned about his
Yeah,
legacy, because there's a discussion between the husband and wife about, him maybe writing his fiction, because a lot of his true crime stuff is where all of his issues come up with people, like, the kids at school, like making fun of the kids because his dad's like some creepy like true crime writer who's in the
right.
news occasionally. He'll have these television appearances, and I got to be honest, that part seemed a little unreasonable. When I was a kid, I didn't know who any true crime writers were, to be honest. But whatever. It's part of
Yeah,
the story.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. Sure. It's a bit of a stretch, but it adds a lot of motivation to the Ethan Hawke character, and I think makes him more interesting. Like, yes, he's not a bad guy, but he doesn't realize how selfish he is, and he's also, wanting for his glory days. He had a hit book, Kentucky Blood, they say 10 years prior, and he's kind of, been struggling ever since, never quite reaching that level of fame and success.
And his wife and him, she has like a loving suggestion to him that, well, maybe, you can teach or write fiction again, and he's
Right.
like, I was like, oh, my legacy, it's not like he's concerned about that. He doesn't want to teach, which I get that. That's kind of like a cliche really with like creative people and teaching, like,
Oh, dude.
you know what I'm trying to
Oh.
say? Yeah. Like you become like an
You
art
don't know
teacher.
how many times I've heard, why don't you give lessons and things like that after the band broke up?
Yeah,
Like, because I don't fucking want to.
exactly.
I get it. I found Ethan Hawke sort of, I found him kind of relatable. I'm like, all creative types are kind of the same way.
Yeah, they're on this like mission that is very singular, and especially as a writer, you spend all this time basically, I mean, hours of the day by yourself, locked away in your room, you know,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like they even address that when they first move in about how the kids aren't allowed to go into the room, and the dad is always keeps the door locked,
Right.
because of the subject matter of what he's writing about. There's unpleasant things there, you know. But the wife brings up the point that, well, your legacy is your family, not these books that you write. So there's like kind of the seeds of a conflict within the marriage. And that's not a major plot point, but it's something that just gives you the idea. He's like a Stephen King character. You know what I mean? Where Stephen King oftentimes, for example, The Shining is a perfect example of like him writing himself into the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And oddly enough, that's exactly what Ellison does in the end.
Yeah, actually a lot of this reminded me of like a Stephen King sort of story in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine reading this in one of his collections, 20 years ago. And obviously, Stephen King was probably a huge influence on the writer C. Robert Cargill.
Yeah. So now the creepiest part of the movie is he finds this box of Super 8 films. And this is like one of my favorite things that happen in movies. Whenever they're like some relic from the past comes back into the present, and even like that. You remember that Archive 81 show that got canceled after one season?
Yes, I do remember that.
I mean, that whole movie was about media from the past. You know what I mean? Analyzing old media and having it, like something coming as a result of that. And that's what this movie. Basically, these are snuff films.
Yeah, and the idea of like haunted objects or cursed things, I love that kind of stuff too, man.
Yeah,
and shooting this on Super 8 or 60 millimeter, whatever it is, like really, really effective. And at the time, found footage was really big, so it was kind of cool that they incorporated that into your standard narrative film.
The other element too of this, which really is effective, is how dark everything always is inside the house.
Yes, yeah, we noticed that, but not dark in a murky sort of way. Everything is very clear. It's just really darkly lit. Like just a scene with the family at dinner, or a scene with the husband and the wife in bed has this very like unsettling, menacing tone to it, and that's just with the how they lit it, how dark it is.
Yeah, and that dinner scene really struck me too, because like you would think a dinner scene would be like well lit, there's like
Yeah,
but no, their faces just sort of like come out of the shadows. You know what I mean? There's like everything is just this blackness around them, and then their faces poke out of the shadows over this dimly lit table. And that's how they're enjoying their dinner that night.
yeah. I mean, visually, this is that director's best looking film by far.
So Ellison gets obsessed with watching these films. Okay. And, he gets drawn into this world, and this is going to be the subject of his new true crime book, was try to figure out like what the background is for all this stuff.
All right. Well, we should say he moved into the house of the murder he's investigating.
Right.
And he comes to find tapes from other murders, and man, like you said, the tapes are so effective. All the ways these people die in the snuff film are probably the worst ways you can die.
So the question is who's making the films?
Yes, he even writes that down.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
that's what you were going to say.
Oh, no, nothing. And the just saying that the further he gets into this, the more you start to see him. His appearance subtly changes. He looks a little bit more tired. He's drinking more. Stuff like that.
And then kind of strange things start happening to him.
Yes.
around the house, like things that have a supernatural feel to them.
Right, like the scorpion he finds in the attic, the snake he finds. At one point, he looks back at pictures of the house, real estate, and he notices that the box isn't there. The box of films that he found isn't there.
Yeah.
So who put it there?
And then in his obsessive analysis of these films, well, first he learns out how to digitize everything. So now he has like a digital MP4 or whatever of MOV file of these films, so he's able to watch them and zoom in on certain things, and he sees the face, a weird black metal face poking out of the shadows.
Yes. He also learns how to edit film there's a Google scene in this.
Yeah, that's one of your favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. I could have done without that. Like they could have cut that. It would be believable to me that this writer guy in his 40s would know how to edit film. Like, maybe he took a class in high school or college. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it struck me as odd. Like, what? You don't need a scene of him looking up how to edit film. You think anyone's in the crowd's like, oh God, also this guy also knows how to edit film? No way.
Well, these days everyone knows how to make video. I mean, I personally don't know how to do it. I got to be honest with you. I don't know a thing about editing film, but apparently everyone else does in the world. And what would be more effective would be he taking these fucking archaic Super 8 reels and getting them digitized at some off-site place.
Right.
Like that would have been a more effective scene where he takes these movies. But then again, this might be a little bit of a flaw. What would you do if you worked at like one of these spots that digitizes movies and someone dropped off these snuff films for you to edit, to make MOV files out of?
I mean, I would probably have to say something to someone. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I probably wouldn't even think it was real, but clearly it is. But, that's interesting, too, because, he also at one point picks up the phone to call the cops. But then he looks at a copy of Kentucky Blood on the shelf and thinks, no, he knows what he's doing is wrong in his head, and that it's maybe he's bitten off more than he can chew. Maybe he's in a situation he doesn't fully understand. But the power of fame and money and glory is too much for him.
Yeah, we also see him, we catch him in the twilight of his career too, you know what I mean? Where it's like he's trying to, like you said earlier, to recapture his glory days,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a nice touch. Also, he calls the cops, you don't have a movie. So, or maybe you do, just a very different one.
Right. But he does call the cops eventually, and that's how we meet the deputy.
Yeah, deputy doesn't have a name. He's credited as deputy so-and-so.
Yeah, because that's what he kind of presents that to him. Like the guy rolls up because he was this where he fell or whatever, or he saw some
he
falls
through. Yeah, he falls in his attic. He hits a weak spot in the floor and falls through the floor. And the cops come. Because he thought maybe there was an intruder. Okay.
Right, there you go. That's what it was. So. And that's when the deputy, recognizes him. He wants to get his book signed or whatever, and he's like, "Well, I got some books here. Let me sign it." So, and then he talks about how he's like, how in your books in the section where you thank people, you always refer to Deputy so and so about from this law enforcement agency who would be, wouldn't have been able to have done it without him. And he volunteers himself to be his deputy so-and-so in this particular caper that he's exploring.
Right. Now, this is an actor I like a lot. I actually saw him have a meltdown at the Beverly Center once when I lived in L.A.
When you lived in L.A.?
Yeah.
What was he? What happened? Tell me what happened.
We were in the parking structure, and I recognized him. I also got to point out ISIS drummer Aaron Harris knows him.
Oh, okay.
We did yoga together.
Oh, wow.
And I saw him. I was like, oh, hey, that's that actor, Aaron's buddy. Maybe I'll say hi. I mean, obviously I didn't. I always think that in my head. I see someone, I'm like, yeah, they probably know who I am. I'm going to say hi. But yeah, he was going through his trunk of his SUV and just kind of throwing shit around really haphazardly. He seemed really stressed out. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to my car. I think I'll just avoid this. And at one point, I think I heard a loud banging and fuck. So, yeah, sidebar. Anyway, I like this actor a lot. He is good in everything he does. He brings a certain energy to his performances. He's good in this. I gotta say though, it's a little humorous that I don't think the movie really needs.
Yeah,
You know what I'm trying to say?
yeah. He's played a little heavy-handed with the overeager kind of small town dude. You know.
Just a little, yeah. I just think this movie is so oppressively dark and disturbing. And I understand we need to break this up a little bit. It needs to just have a little undercurrent of humor here and there. I don't think it fits in a movie like this.
And does a movie really need that though? You know what I mean? Like
I don't think it does.
Like The Lodge. We're some of this reminded me a little bit of The Lodge at times too. I mean, totally different types of films, but there was no humor in The Lodge as far as I remember.
No, I get exactly. I thought the same thing as well. And yeah, that movie is such a bleak experience, and this is too.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, like I said, I think they were trying to make like some sort of like mainstream horror hit. So a little comic relief is what they're going for with Deputy Stone. So I think.
Yeah. So it turns out that this image that he saw in this video is okay, there's a couple things going on here. He notices his daughter's drawings. Or there's drawings that have a character called Mr. Boogie. Like that's not part of the family. You know what I mean? There'll be like a family unit drawing with a tree or something like that. And then there's another entity there called Mr. Boogie.
Right.
All right. So that's, kind of creepy. Definitely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He's starting to put the pieces together and realizing he's in way over his head. And here's a guy who does true crime, doesn't believe in the supernatural. And I think he's in denial about how, like, what's happening. Maybe he's trying to find a logical explanation for this and can't.
So, of course, we locate the Vincent D'Onofrio character in this. He was like they have a FaceTime exchange, and he's like,
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, no. I just thought it was a strange visual choice to do, like they have like a Skype conversation since Deputy So-and-so says he's local.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why don't they just meet face to face? I don't know. Nitpicky, strange choice, I thought.
I was thinking the same thing too, actually. It's like there should have been a scene, like it just would have seemed a lot cooler if he went to his office at the university and there was like, you saw books, maybe like the Necronomicon was there or something, you know what I mean? Or like some kind of occult like artwork hanging from the walls and you sit down and he's got this cool desk with stuff on it. That was how it would have been, I think, a little bit better,
Yeah, I completely agree. And you have Vincent D'Onofrio, who's great in everything he does.
Maybe D'Onofrio was like out of the country or something like that on vacation when they shot this.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. I just thought that was a really weird choice.
Yeah.
But he's the guy who's basically going to give the exposition dump of the legend of this demon. And I know this is more your wheelhouse, Mike. You're more into this stuff. Is this a real thing from mythology, or is this made up for the movie?
In the movie, it's called Bagul. All right, but when I read it as Moloch, there's like because they talk about how this is part of like Christian mythology, right? Now Moloch was it's in the book of Leviticus, and it's like a Hebrew part of the Hebrew like mythology, and Moloch was like there was like a child eater basically. They would sacrifice children to Moloch. So that's how I see Bagul being like the same as Moloch, especially since they tied it to early Christian mythology.
Oh, and he had a brother or something like that. I can't remember if this was in the movie or something I read. And Like there's an explanation why he doesn't have an eyes and mouth.
Yeah, that Moloch has eyes in a mouth. That might have been some
Okay.
license they took with the character.
But I thought the mythology was kind of cool.
Yeah,
Like he can come at you through images, through drawings and things like that. So it makes sense he would try to stay alive through more modern means of technology. You see like a photo of him on Ethan Hawke's laptop, and it moves. He's there. He's alive in these images. I thought that was interesting.
well, this is the part of the film that really, really grabbed me. I mean, even like when I
Okay.
saw this thing the first a long time ago, because I think going way back to the idea of tulpas, which are these entities that don't exist in the real world, but they're sort of created by the collective consciousness and exist in a non not in the real world and somewhere else. You know what I mean? And that's what remember Slender Man,
Oh,
and
sure. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, so I guess a tulpa, trying to define it more, it's like it's a being that kind of materializes through like thoughts. It's created by like people concentrating on something. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So
yeah.
that's kind of like, and then when Slender Man happened, uh, it's the idea of something that doesn't really exist in the physical world, but enough people believed in it, and the idea of it motivated people to actually go out and do murders.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So the question is Slender Man real? And it's like, well,
Right.
if enough people believe in it being real, it is real, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of like what tied into this Bagul slash Moloch idea. It was like, this doesn't exist in the modern world. It only exists in this media that people are looking at, right? And it takes shape because maybe it took shape thousands of years ago because enough people believed in it, and it just kind of propagated into modern society.
Yeah.
Fascinating idea. Something that actually, like, I'm working on this essay that I'm writing, and it's going to be a future episode over at the Patreon. Everything Went Black, Long Shadows, that Ralph and I are doing about True Detective, and
Mm,
the weird elements of that story where the character Errol is motivated, by this mythical thing, and Carcosa doesn't exist except in his head.
right.
And whether or not it's supernatural or not, and it's supernatural in a sense that it exists in his head and it's motivating to do these things. And that's kind of like connects to this, like that idea that there's like this ethereal thing out there that is creating, that has results in the physical world, but only exists in this ethereal world of thoughts and nightmares and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I dig this movie so much. Is this Bagul character doesn't exist in the physical world, but there's physical world consequences to, it possesses people, it creates a bond with them, and it motivates them to do all these evil things.
Yeah. It's very cool. It's very cool that he's hardly in the movie at all.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just a face here, like an image there, and it's not really over explained. You know what I mean? It's still kind of vague. You're sort of right there with the character. Like you're never really a step ahead of him. His anxieties and everything. You feel him. You start to really feel him unravel. Like,
Also, the design for the character is kind of interesting because I guess Cargill crafted it again as like these kind of black metal, like corpse paint like looking faces, which he saw online.
yeah, they actually specifically even mentioned black metal in the movie.
I didn't catch that. Really?
Yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio. Like when he looks at the symbol that Ethan Hawke has found on the tapes. He's like, no, that's not like a pentagram. This isn't something you'd see in some, like Norwegian black. He said
Oh,
something
right.
about black metal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Now I remember that
yeah.
part. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it's clear we like this movie. Like, there's after you get that scene, you get there's you get to some scenes later in the movie that really almost derailed the movie for me.
Okay.
And it's the CGI ghost children.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. It would have been
I mean,
effective without them too, I think.
I don't think you really need them at all. I mean, the movie it pushes you where it needs to go, man. Like, I think that it was just a little heavy-handed. Like, you didn't need the ghost children because it's you start to piece things together as Ethan Hawke does. That who's making these tapes, and one kid from every household has gone missing. You kind of get there. I don't think you really need the ghost children. It doesn't fit, and it feels like it belongs in a more generic, crowd-pleasing kind of horror movie. And it just cuts the tension here. The anxiety this movie gives you. I don't know. It doesn't fit. It's of a different movie.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that speaks to what you were saying about how it's like this movie was maybe the intention was to make a franchise out of it or something like that.
Yeah, and it's the one thing I remember even the first time seeing. I'm like, oh man, we're not gonna go like have these helpful ghost children thing, are we? Please no. And I'm glad it doesn't go that route. I'm glad it doesn't become the focus of the movie. It's just I don't know. It's like one of the few flaws of the movie.
Yeah.
Um,
So that leads us to what actually is going on, like the process of this whole thing of the young daughter actually becoming the one member of the family that actually carries out the wishes of Bagul.
yeah, it's good misdirection too because you think the movie's kind of pushing you towards the son.
Yes.
So yeah, I thought that was a nice little bit of misdirection. So Ethan Hawke realizes he's in way over his head. Something is going on here. He doesn't want any part of. They panic, pack up, and move back to their old house. Which I guess I mean, if you think about it, it's a little silly. Like Bugal's plan is to get you to move. So he can kill you or get to you, I don't know. But I mean, the movie's so good. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah, you move, and that's what carries out his timeline or something.
Yeah.
And it leads to a pretty bleak ending for a movie that was trying to be a fucking crowd pleaser, man.
Dude, the movie, that's what I mean. It's like it's definitely more in line with like The Lodge, man. Like where the ending is just so dark and black and it's such a bummer,
Yeah, I mean, I remember being shocked because when I saw the CGI kids, I was like, all right, this movie's gonna go it's gonna have some sort of happy ending, fake out the end, but like it really went to some very dark places I was not expecting.
What I thought was going to happen was that they were going to somehow defeat Bagul,
Yeah.
but there was going to be the door was left open for like, well, he just retreated to some ethereal world where he still exists. They just defeated him this time, but he's still at war with like the rest of humanity,
That's exactly what I thought first time seeing it. So they fucking went there, man. I got to give it to them.
So the daughter becomes the instrument of Bagul and murders the family. And there's like that final scene, man, with Ethan Hawke's character, Ellison, just resigned, understanding, realizing what's going on. And it's fucking dark, man.
It's so dark. It is so unsettling. The look on his face as he is drugged and tied up. It's like a look of defeat. It's not even like terror. Because like he's looking at his wife and kid tied up. He knows exactly what's going to happen. And he realizes it's all his fault.
Yep, that's right. And but once again, Bagul not actively doing anything in this movie. Just that's the motivator for things that are in the material world to happen,
Right. Yeah. Which kind of makes him it makes him scarier to me. That he's not a physical presence.
Yeah, and it ties into like it makes this movie made me think about a lot of different things, motivations and justifications for things that happen in the real world. Like, if you think about, the thousands of years of conflict that happened just because people believe in different types of gods and stuff, and that it speaks to that, and also the whole tulpa idea, and whether the supernatural, whether or not things are actually supernatural or not. And the argument is that if people actually believe in something, then it is real. If it motivates you to go out and murder someone, then who's to say it's not real?
Right, and that would have been a very interesting idea to explore in sequels. And from what I remember, the sequel just goes into the generic sequel route.
Oh yeah, that's right. So you watched the sequel. That's right.
I was gonna watch it last night and I fell asleep because I remember I was like, I did see this when it came out. It was terrible. Maybe I'll watch it again, and I was asleep within like 5 minutes.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, it's very disappointing, as most horror sequels are trying to be. Like, I think if this was like a 90s or 80s movie, it would have been like a direct-to-video kind of thing. Like, this was very uninspired. Too bad, because it sets it up for you can go in some very interesting directions with this, and it just doesn't. But yeah, I mean, what we got, like again, they were trying to do some big horror hit, and I think they've made something way more substantial. I mean, this is a big budget Hollywood horror movie with known actors. So it wasn't really expecting too much, and what we got was, I think this is one of the better horror movies of the last 23 years.
Sure. Keep that in mind for our forthcoming analysis of the first quarter century of the new millennium horror.
Oh, I definitely will. Yeah. Like I said, a few flaws I could do without the CGI. Ghost kids, maybe, like I feel like humor could be completely absent from the movie and keep that tone. There's some silly shit too. I mean, like having to move from the house to a new house. I don't really quite understand the logic or how no one could catch that. No cop that could realize, hey, these people all like previously lived in a murder house. No one put that together.
Yeah, that's true. That's a flaw. That could have kind of been like a little bit better writing, could have dealt with it though, I think.
Yeah, and also, like, there's some weird, when he moves back into his old house, he burns the film and the Super 8 camera, and then it shows up at his house, at his new house, which I like. I like that idea of a cursed object. You can't get rid of it. You're fucked. This thing is with you forever. I like that. But, like, when he goes through the box, he finds a thing labeled extended cuts.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's a little goofy.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, like, Bugal is a film fan. It's about director's cuts.
The Bugal murder, whatever, Bugal murders the director's cut. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was very silly, and maybe like he goes through the tapes and finds something he didn't see before, and it's stuff that was cut out. It didn't need the label extended cut, and it tells you what you already know. The kids are the ones taping this and doing the murders, the missing kids. And, he even says that at one point. He's watching like, oh my God, it's the missing kids. Yeah, we know. Like, you don't have to say it out loud.
Right on, man. So that's our analysis on this film. So what do you give it as a score?
4.5.
Dude, you and I, for what seems like the first time ever, actually agree on a score. I give it a 4.5 as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's not quite a 5 because of those little things, but the movie is good enough to overcome what little nitpicks I have. I think it's cool that this didn't really become a franchise. They tried a sequel, didn't really work. I don't think anyone gave a shit. But yeah, for a Blumhouse movie and what they were trying to do, they made something that was clearly very disturbing And I think a lot of people watched this movie who don't normally watch horror movies, and it probably ruined their fucking day.
Yeah, yeah,
So good
definitely.
on them. Yeah, yeah, because this doesn't like it might have a little bit of that feel of a mainstream horror movie, but it feels more like a European downer from like the 80s or 90s. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And the way, just the darkness of the way it's shot, like everything just, it just looks like you're in an uncomfortable place the whole time, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I said, visually, this is the director's like best movie. I really haven't liked anything he's done since then.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
you and
either.
I talked about the Black Phone,
Yeah,
and it was just whatever. Kind of, I thought it was forgettable.
I thought so too. It's interesting though that he rekindled his relationship with Ethan Hawke for that film. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a total dud. Ethan Hawke is good in it. James Ransone is in it. He's in a small part. He's really good. It just wasn't to my taste. It feels like they had their mainstream horror hit with that movie.
I think Ethan Hawke has got a real flair for doing horror films, actually.
Yeah, he does. He's really, I don't know if we pointed it out, he's really good in this, in Sinister.
He's good in the Black Phone too. Just that I didn't really care for the film though.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think Ethan Hawke had done a horror movie previously before working with Scott Derrickson. And it's kind of cool. Like it reminds you of like those back in the old days where you'd have these great thespian actors being in these kind of like horror movies, like you have um God, what am I thinking? The Halloween.
Oh,
I can't
are you talking about Donald Pleasance?
Donald Pleasance.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like great actor, but he's kind of like maybe slumming it in a horror movie, but doing like just a great job. Or like George C. Scott in
Oh,
The Changeling and Exorcist 3. You know what I mean? Like you don't really see like a lot of big name actors doing horror movies.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, that. Oh, actually, that was like the Hand, Michael Caine.
That's yeah, great,
That's a
great
guy you don't
example.
see in horror films too often, really, except that he was
No,
in Dressed to Kill too, which I thought was kind of
no.
cool.
He was also in Jaws 4, one of the worst movies ever made.
Jaws 4. I don't know if I've ever actually seen Jaws 4.
Oh boy, you're really missing out. It's actually so bad it's good. It really is.
That's funny. So yeah, man,
Right on.
that's the show for this week, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, take care.